Welcome to another episode of the Meal Prep Monday podcast. I'm your host and founder of Prep Dish, Allison Schaaf. In today's episode, I am talking about how I handle the phrase, "I want something else," in my household. Before we dive into today's episode, I have an email to read from Prep Dish customer Allison from North Carolina. Allison writes, "I am loving Prep Dish. Thank you for checking in and thank you for all that you do to put this together. I am a mom to 4 kids, ages 2.5 to 9 years old, and my husband has a busy job. Meal planning felt like a huge task, and every 6 months or so, I felt burnt out on recipe ideas and discouraged from kid taste preferences or pickiness. I'm also recently lactose intolerant, so that has been hard since so many family recipes contain dairy. These past 4 weeks have been delightful. Thank you. My family has loved the recipes. It has been so easy to make simple modifications where needed. I love that the recipes are not dairy centered. Thank you for all the great tips in the first 2 weeks too. That was so helpful." Allison, thank you so much for sharing. And if you have not tried Prep Dish, we have a 2-week free trial set up for you at prepdish.com/MPM, short for Meal Prep Monday. As always, that link is in the show notes. And the help that she was referring to in the first 2 weeks. So when you first sign up for Prep Dish, we have this onboarding sequence of emails that just gives you tips and tricks for making the plans work and helping you to be successful in those first few weeks. So if you do sign up, you will get those emails that she references. So make sure those are going to your inbox. We also have a Facebook group. I can link that in the show notes as well. You're welcome to join the Facebook group, even if you're not signing up right now, just to kind of get a sense of what's going on in there. We do have people posting, pictures of their meals and how things are going. So that's a great place to get connected as well. Again, if you want to sign up for 14 days free, it's prepdish.com/MPM. Okay, so today I wanted to revisit a topic that, we've talked about before, which is picky eating. We've actually done several episodes on this, but I know it just comes up so often. And for me, having right now, I have a 5.5-year-old, a 3.5-year-old, and an 8-month-old who, by the way, is currently eating. So that's been really fun to dive into baby-led weaning for the third time. But today I wanted to address the topic of how I handle it when my kid says, "I want to eat something else for dinner." So first, I'll preface it by saying I really don't have any picky eaters. I would describe both my boys as like really good eaters. They do eat everything, but I want to also single out, like there are moments, if you would look in this like one window of time, you would think they were picky eaters, right? Like they make statements and they have preferences in moments that make it look like they are really picky eaters and that they don't want to eat anything. And I want to just walk through how I handle those moments, but of course, keeping in mind that for my household, like these moments are kind of few and far between, but I do also think that how I handle them helps to keep them that way. So really, I have sort of 2 different instances that I want to talk through. So first was this week. So the week before this, we had a soup. My son completely refused to eat it. He's like, "I want it separate." Sometimes I do with mixed dishes, I will keep things separate, like especially pasta. I've really struggled to, 'cause in the beginning, I would, put the components on their plate versus everything mixed together. And now they've gotten used to that. And I've tried to transition into like everything together. They prefer the components. I'm still working on that. Soup is a little trickier. I do sometimes put it on a plate versus a bowl, but at school, they eat soup and they eat it all the time and they love it. And half the time we have soup, they talk about how much they love it. Other times they kind of refuse. So last week was one of those moments where I'd spent a lot of time and effort on a soup and my 5.5-year-old was like, "Nope, I don't like soup. What are you thinking? I want this separate," and didn't want to eat it. And fast forward a week later, I made a totally different soup and he sat down at lunch, devoured it, and went on and on about how much he loved it. Told me multiple times how much he appreciated me cooking it for him, how much he appreciated me cooking for him in general, and just how good this soup was. Side note, if any of you are curious about this soup, I'm currently recipe testing December week 3 super fast plans. and it's a sausage and potato soup. I know this is a sidebar, but I'm sure some of you are going to be curious. So it's a really simple soup. It's a chopped onion, 2 chopped carrots, 3 chopped celery stalks, some minced garlic, saute all that, and then add in 3 chopped Yukon Gold potatoes, add in chicken broth and some sliced sausage. It's the like chicken and apple sausages, and just cook for like 30 minutes, 30, 45 minutes. And that's really it. So that's the soup that he was raving about. Really simple. And he just went on and on that he loved it. And that felt like a win, especially since the week before he'd kind of had this like moment of like, oh yeah, I don't like soups. So then, of course, fast forward a few hours later, and it's dinner. And I'm still testing the December week 3 plan. And there's an Italian chopped salad. And I just tossed everything together. I'm like, it's got everything he loves. There's nothing new in here. It's mozzarella balls, chopped celery and bell pepper, tomatoes, chickpeas. Literally every single one of these items I've listed, he loves. Like, these are all things he loves. And he looks at the dish and he's like, no way. I don't like this. I want something else for dinner. This actually took me a little bit by surprise. I've never once in his 5.5 years made him something else for dinner. So I was a little surprised that he would even ask that. But I stood firm and said, no, we're not going to make something else. You don't have to eat this, but this is what's for dinner. It's actually funny now that I have 2 that are young and in that same age. I try not to pressure or say, oh, you have to try it or this is so yummy. I mentioned casually, like, you do like these things, buddy, but if you don't want to eat it, you don't have to. But his brother, on the other hand, will kind of pressure him. So it's funny how they will remind each other that they like the foods, or like if one of them likes it, they'll encourage the other one. So even though I don't do that, they will amongst themselves do some encouraging. So I didn't push it. He, kind of threw a fit for a little while. And eventually he did put some of the food on his plate. He did eat some of it. He didn't devour it. He didn't eat a whole lot, but he didn't go hungry. We have an evening snack. He had a normal amount for snack. He went to bed. He was fine. He was not hungry. We don't have any more of that dish. I wish we did, because I do find often what happens, a lot of times I will make a dish for dinner and double the recipe, have enough for lunch the next day. And I found if they don't like something at dinner, usually by lunch the next day, they're more familiar with it. Like, what he didn't like about that was it looked new to him. It did not look like something he'd had. It had the balsamic dressing already mixed in. So it just looked unfamiliar to him. And so that can be a little overwhelming, for young kids to have something completely new. Even though he's used to having new dishes all the time, it still can be, scary, for lack of better words, to his little mind. But, we're not going to have it another day right now. But my guess is if we were having it again for lunch, he'd probably be a little more likely to eat it and not complain and not worry about it. So that's how I handled that. The other thing that has been interesting is there really isn't a food. Like, if I had to think through which foods my kids don't eat, there isn't one that I can think of. Now, any moment in time, is there a food they're going to turn their nose up and say, I don't eat that? Yes. Consistently, more than 2 times in a row, something they're not going to eat? No. They always do eat something eventually. It's like they'll go and say, oh, I don't eat spinach. And then the next day they'll eat it. Or I don't eat this. And then the next day they'll eat it. The one thing, though, that he has been consistently not eating is what he calls kachia seeds. Chia seeds for short, but his kachia seeds, I used to put them in oatmeal all the time. He always ate them. Recently, he doesn't want the kachia seeds in his oatmeal. So I finally started taking them out. I'm like, okay, buddy, we're not going to put the chia seeds in the oatmeal. For our soaked oats, I'll sometimes put them on the side. And then, me and his brother have them. But he just doesn't want them. Now, this weekend, we went out to brunch and I ordered a platter of gluten-free pancakes. The gluten-free pancakes were made with chia seeds mixed into the pancakes and also sprinkled all over the top of the pancakes. And guess who ate 1.5 of the 2 gluten-free pancakes that were in the center of the table? The kid who doesn't like chia seeds. So, it's really interesting how even if they do make a statement of, I don't like this, I think the point in saying this is, it's okay for them to say that. I acknowledge it and I don't argue it, right? I don't say, oh, no, but no, you do like chia seeds. I say, okay, that's fine. You don't like them. But by not making a big deal about it, by not pushing it, eventually he has come to like chia seeds and he did devour them and he kind of figures that out on his own. Now, the trick was, in my mind, not to be like, Nope, Ivan doesn't like chia seeds. We're not going to order these pancakes. Now, granted, I didn't order those for him. They weren't his only meal. They were there. They're the center of the table. Definitely no pressure. Someone else would have eaten them had he not eaten them. They were not his. But by me in my mind not saying and labeling the child as like, he does not like this. Like, I have never once out loud said, oh, Ivan doesn't like chia seeds, or at least not like around him, and made a big deal about it. I've never said, so and so doesn't like this, because what I found is over time, yeah, maybe they go through a phase or a moment where they don't want to eat something, but over time, eventually there's nothing that they don't eat and eventually prefer, at least in my case. Now, I know some kids are different. There are issues. And if you want to go back, some of the other picky eating episodes, there definitely are different situations, especially if you have like sensory issues or other things going on. It's not always going to be as simple as this. But if there's just some general like pickiness and that sort of thing, I always say first start with evaluating, you and how you're handling the situation and how you might be labeling or even enabling some of this with, the request for another meal, or really, doubling down on, oh yeah, you don't like this, we're not going to do this, or saying out loud where your child can overhear, oh, my kid doesn't like broccoli. If you start really re-emphasizing that belief, then it's really easy for it to become a bigger deal than it needs to be. Because in fact, what I've noticed is a lot of these preferences kind of come and go. And sometimes they're, at least in my case, I've noticed with my kids, it may not even necessarily be an actual preference. It's more like, I want to have an opinion. And right now in this moment, this is my opinion, and I want you to acknowledge it and respect it. And as long as I do that in the moment, then the opinion can change. And I don't make a big deal about that. I let the opinions come and go. I acknowledge them, I respect them, and we move on. So hopefully this is helpful. I will link some of our other picky eating episodes in the show notes. Like I said, I know there can be deeper issues and other things going on with picky eating. It's not always this simple, but there always is something that we as parents can look and see, what we're doing to help or hinder what's going on. And again, some of those episodes will dive deeper into other issues as well. If you are interested in trying out the Prep Dish meal plans, a reminder that I have the 2-week free trial at prepdish.com/MPM. These are the plans that I use in my household every week. I make these plans. These are the meals that my kids eat, that I eat, that my husband eats. Again, that's prepdish.com/MPM. If you are just starting out, I suggest trying the super fast plans. Those are really the family-friendly plans that are quick, easy, and, kind of the most kid-friendly as well. That's all I have for this week's episode. I will be back again next Monday with another episode.